Welcome to LearnToRace and our video series looking at some of the simulators. This video, following a suggestion from a viewer, is comparing Assetto Corsa Competizione, Assetto Corsa and RFactor2. We've covered Assetto Corsa Competizione versus Assetto Corsa already in a previous video, but let's go over some of the points again. So we'll be using the 911 Cup car, as that's available in every sim, and as it's not an aero-dependent car, it should give us a good comparison in terms of the tyre modelling and the chassis and suspension modelling. The track we're using, as you can see, is the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. This is base content in each simulator, so it takes away vagaries of modding team talents when they're bringing a particular track to the sim. So let's start with the Assetto Corsa Competizione. Our previous summary concluded it was all round close to AC, but not quite there yet. Looking at it in a bit more detail, the way the car responds and reacts to both driver input and the environment is fantastic. It has good response to steering and brake, and reacts to bumps in a convincingly real way. This is true all the way up to the peak of grip. But what's letting the game down at the moment is its response over the grip limit. The fall away of grip, especially noticeable on the rear axle, is sudden and dramatic, much more so than you find in real life. I have a fair amount of real life experience on Blancpain specification Pirelli slick tyres, and the breakaway you feel on those is much more progressive than you're finding in the game. This leads to some silly moments and spins, especially in tight slow hairpins or chicanes, where you want a small degree of over-rotation in the car to help you round the bend. In ACC, this often results in a near irrecoverable slide or a spin. Now, I think this is the underlying root cause of the sensation of slippery curves, as the extra bit of grip loss you experience on a curve is compounded by this traction drop-off, which causes unrealistic curve interaction behaviour. So here we are, moving on to Assetto Corsa. The overall sensation of driving is great. We noted before how the front axle gave up grip slightly too easily compared to the rear. This results in a slightly less responsive feeling to the front of the car compared to ACC. Where this shines is the bumps and curves give a real, very true to life reaction. The grass is a little bit too easy to drive on, as in most sims, but focusing on staying between the lines gives a great overall feeling. The tyre feel on and over the limit is also excellent. It allows you to push, but also punishes you for overdriving too much. This is especially noticeable in the real road cars in-game, which on the semi-slick track day tyres feel extremely lifelike compared to real road cars, on and over the limit. It's also noticeable on all of the slickshod racing cars that you find in the game. Due to that inherent understeer bias that we noticed in the cars, you often find yourself turning in too early, trying to make the apex as the front axle won't take the later turning. It forces you to keep weight over the nose of the car by use of the brake a little bit longer than you might do in real life. Having said all that, this is a minor handling characteristic and is by no means a deal breaker. It is often what you would see in a real life car that just has a mild understeer tendency to it. We mentioned in the previous video on the subject about ABS implementation. Whether by design to allow non-ABS drivers the ability to be faster than ABS drivers, or whether by a maturing understanding of the coding by the developers, using the ABS in AC gives a very understeer biased entry to the corner. And playing with a balance setting for the brakes doesn't alter this underlying characteristic until it develops into a snap oversteer from too much rear brake. Assetto Corsa Competizione seems much better in this regard, giving you much more ability to fine-tune your entry rotation using the ABS. Lastly, let's move on to RFactor2. The first thing I notice when driving in this game is how much the car is moving in the environment, bucking and shimmying over the bumps and imperfections in the road. The damping, however, must be exceptional. There's very little of this sensation actually gets transmitted to the driver. It gives an almost disconnected feeling from the road surface underneath compared to what your eyes are seeing is going on. The car feels very responsive underneath you with instant reaction to any input. Sometimes this feels a little too much though, almost as if the car has no mass or inertia initially. The brakes especially feel remarkably good at partial pressure, too good in fact, but conversely not quite good enough at high brake pressure. Up to the limit the car feels good. As we mentioned, slightly too good at times, but it's over the limit where RFactor2 struggles with the car and this track combo. But it struggles for the opposite reasons to ACC. Here the car is far too easy to catch and overdriving seems to give no penalty. From a pick up and play point of view, this means you get on the pace very quickly as you can just grab the car by the scruff of the neck and throw it at the track and be there or thereabouts because it's too forgiving. The risk-reward ratio is off for me. Lastly is the way the car reacts to curbs. Whilst the car bucks and the body bounces, it seems to give no difference to the overall grip. Driving on curbs is always a trade-off between less stability and grip, but a flatter, faster line. Here there seems to be no penalty for monstering the curbs. So in summary, on my rig and with my hardware, AC is the most true to life overall driving experience, followed closely by ACC and then RFactor2. Each sim has their merits and may suit your particular driving style, but for me, AC is the king. For now.